First up was Ajax, then came Benfica, and now we're looking at Southampton. How would they have lined up if they hadn't sold any of their stars? They may have done a darn sight better in the Premier League, that's for certain. So who would make this fantasy dream team? Well, let's take a look. First off, in between the sticks, and I will say at this point, we're going to put no current Southampton players in because I'm not so sure they deserve it, but it's Paulo Gazzaniga. Now, I know you're going to think, hold on a second, Matt, surely they've had better goalkeepers than that are still playing at the moment. But considering the fact he's now keeping goal for Tottenham and doing it pretty well, challenging World Cup winner Hugo Lloris for #1 spot, I'm pretty sure he would get into this team at the moment. As mentioned before, we aren't putting any Southampton players in. Angus Gunn does look like a good goalkeeper though. Artur Boruc is definitely past his best, so I'm going to go for Gazzaniga. Of course, if you guys have any other options, let me know in the comments section. But with the Argentinian in between the sticks, let's move on to the defensive units. So first up, and it's Luke Shaw. Now, he hasn't been at the club for quite a few years now after making that £35 million switch to Manchester United a few years ago. But what he is a flying left back, and when really on his game, could provide brilliant attacking help and defensive cover. For sure, there's no one else who could really suit this role for Southampton. Over to the right-hand side of the pitch, and it's a toss-up between the two. And a few years ago, after his move to Liverpool, I definitely would have put Nathaniel Clyne in this position, hands down. But now, considering the way his career has sort of tailed off and the fact that Callum Chambers is really proving himself to be a good player at Arsenal, I'm going to put Chambers into the right back spot. Now, there may not be much difference between the two at the moment, except Chambers definitely is on the way up his career, whereas I mentioned before, Clyne is on the way down. I think he's probably better at centre-back, but still nonetheless can fill in at right back as well. So next up, we move into the centre-back partnership, where, first off, I thought, of course, of putting Toby Alderweireld in there, fantastic centre-half. However, he was actually only on loan at Southampton, and the chance on signing him permanently for Atletico Madrid, well, they just weren't really going to happen. In the end, he did sign for Spurs, so I'm not going to put him in on this list. But who I am going to put in is definitely someone better than Alderweireld. In fact, it's the best centre-back in the world. It's Virgil van Dijk. I honestly have no doubt that Van Dijk probably could have stopped about 6 or 7 of the 9 that Leicester put past Southampton. Okay, they may still have lost because they can't put the ball in the net at the other end of the pitch, but Van Dijk definitely would have helped them out. In fact, I think he would have helped this whole team out. They'd be in such a better position if they held on to him, but of course, they were never going to turn down 75 million from Liverpool. Alongside Van Dijk, and because there's no Alderweireld, I'm going to go with Dejan Lovren. Of course, when the fact that Van Dijk moved for so much money, it kind of overshadowed the fact that Lovren as well did move from Southampton to Liverpool. It's at Liverpool that his career has had a few ups and a few downs. Of course, he did take Croatia to the final of the World Cup, which he participated in pretty well. That was after a pretty poor spell at Liverpool, so you can see the both sides of Dejan Lovren in the last few years. I think that with Virgil van Dijk alongside him, he and pretty much any other defender in the world is instantly going to become a better player, playing on alongside the big Dutchman. So we've got a back four of Shaw, Lovren, Van Dijk and Callum Chambers, but what about the midfield, where this is where things really heat up, and there is a hell of a lot of money that Southampton could have made if they'd had these players today and then sold them. First off, moving to the midfield, and there's got to be a defensive anchor. That is Victor Wanyama. He is another one, much like Mauricio Pochettino and Paulo Gazzaniga, who swapped Southampton for White Hart Lane. But Wanyama at the moment doesn't really look to be playing too much at Tottenham, so a move back to Southampton actually probably isn't that too far-fetched. As for what he did on the South Coast, well, he proved himself to be a real top signing after coming in from Celtic, so much so eventually that he did move on. He is literally the only defensive player in this midfield because the rest of it is full of ridiculous attacking talent. Starting off with a very own academy product from Southampton, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Now, you're going to see a theme in a load of players here. They've basically moved from Southampton onto Liverpool, kind of like a Liverpool reserve team. But even though the Ox is now at Liverpool, it was actually at Arsenal where he made his name and made his big transfer. It was a bit of a shock actually when he left to join rivals Liverpool for 40 million, seeing as he's now gone on to win the Champions League and proven himself to be a top midfielder. Once he gets over all of those injury worries, I'm sure that Arsenal would definitely have him back now, so there's no doubt in my mind that Southampton would love to have him in the midfield, or the attack, or literally any position. He is partnering Victor Wanyama in our central midfield position. But of course, we could have had other names in there. Ward-Prowse, as I said, we're not picking any Southampton players, but also Morgan Schneiderlin, who left for Manchester United a few years ago. So with that said and done, let's move on to another academy product as he sits in at number 10. It's Adam Lallana. Honestly, since moving to Liverpool, he hasn't really hit the heights that he promised whilst at Southampton. He was the club captain, he came through the academy, he played through those promotions back to the Premier League, and then injuries really struck upon his move to Anfield. When he does show what he can do on the ball, he's a great player, Lallana, so much so that he's been in the England squad for a fair few years, but he can't really get back in because so much talent around him, both at club and international level, has overtaken his ability. Right now, as I mentioned with all of these players, Southampton would definitely take him back, and I think he'd suit this number 10 role perfectly on the South Coast. So now we move into the front three, and of course, what has happened here is basically as soon as the talent becomes too big, Southampton aren't in the position to turn down a load of money. It's such a shame, but it does mean that these players take the next step in their career, and all three of them have gone on to much, much bigger things. First off, on the left wing, Sadio Mane. One of my votes for the Ballon d'Or Player of the Year. He certainly should be in the top 5, and since moving to Southampton and then on to Liverpool, has really upped his game to become one of the best attackers in Europe. He's so consistent, he's practically carried Liverpool when Salah's had an off day, and there is no one more feared at the moment in the Premier League. Maybe Raheem Sterling alongside that. But Sadio Mane, of course, did have a brief but very good spell at Southampton, so much so that Liverpool did decide to shell out all that money for him. He is on the left wing. On the right wing now, and someone, if you return to Southampton, he's literally going to be playing at the opposite side of the pitch to where he started. Gareth Bale moved to Spurs back in 2007, but actually at the time, he was a left back. He was a young, exciting player who could bend in a free kick every so often and was a brilliant set-piece magician. He was nothing like the marauding forward we saw then at Spurs in the latter years and at Real Madrid, with all the athletic ability, scoring goal after goal after goal and literally carrying the team when certain other players weren't really up to the task. Of course, he didn't have to do that too much at Real Madrid, and now things have really turned sour. But at Tottenham, back in the Premier League, he was the man. And if he was back at Southampton right now, one, they definitely couldn't afford his wages. I'm sure Saints fans would be absolutely loving to have him home on the right-hand side of this front three. Also, another Saints Academy product could have gotten to the team, but Theo Walcott just doesn't really cut it at the moment. I'm not quite sure he cut it during his years at Arsenal, and now at Everton, he's really not showing why he was so hyped in the first place. So with that said and done, we move on to the forward. Now, in this front 3-4, if you include Lallana as well, the players would definitely move about a lot. There'd be loads of room for quick, slick passing and some excellent finishing at the end of it all. And who better than a player who is now completely showing that style at Ajax than Dusan Tadic. I feel like Southampton really missed a trick here. They bought in Tadic, he was doing quite well on the South Coast, and then 16.5 million was enough for Ajax to take him off their hands. Now he's gone on to be one of the best players in Europe. Last season, there was literally no one who could get near him. He was instrumental in taking Ajax to the semi-finals of the Champions League and so nearly to the final. Now, if Southampton tried to buy him back, he'd probably cost double, maybe even more. And that's for someone who's almost 31 years old. Nonetheless, he still was a great player at Southampton and, of course, would still bring so much to this team right now, especially a goal-shy Southampton. So there you have that fantastic Southampton team that could have been. With Gazzaniga in goal, there's Shaw, Lovren, Van Dijk and Chambers, Wanyama and Ox in the midfield, Mane, Lallana and Bale behind Dusan Tadic. Of course, let me know your thoughts on who could have been in the Southampton team, who you would have had in, who you would have kicked out, and where you think they'd finish in the Premier League if they still had all of these players. That's all from me today, though, and until next time, I will see you guys later.